Because the poll that we did in conjunction with our friends over at SurveyUSA was basically taken along 3 time intervals last week during a very tumultuous news cycle after the presidential debate, after the president was revealed of his own COVID-19 diagnosis, and then finally 40% of likely voter respondents after the president was hospitalized at Walter Reed. You go back to those initial numbers after the debate, but before any other news of week, and they did show a very strong lead of support by about 10 points from former Vice President over the incumbent president, Donald Trump. Good news there for the Biden campaign, but as the news cycle went along and a lot of uncertainty with what likely voters would say, it only appears here, Jill, as if the former Vice President Joe Biden further consolidating support now to a 16-point margin, according to our poll, 56% to 40%. And that is right in line with recent numbers here, Jill, that we have seen the last 48 hours, first from an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, and then once again yesterday morning, right around the same time that we released ours from the folks over at CNN. SurveyUSA does stress and underscore here, Jill, a lot can change. This is volatile, this is fluid, but I think this does show a very good snapshot of the moment for after an incredibly tumultuous week, Jill.
Okay, so I know the poll looked at some key demographics. What did we see there?
Well, let's start with the suburbs because that's an incredibly important voting block or voting demographic, both for suburban male voters as well as suburban women voters. And they're not great news for President Trump, right? I mean, this is a large part of the reason that he was able to, I think, surprise pollsters back in 2016. But 2 years later, during the 2018 midterms here, Jill, it's a big part of the reason that Democrats were able to flip a lot of these previously red House districts to blue and give Speaker Pelosi back control of the gavel. Men in the suburbs are critical to president's support, now backing Biden 51% to 44%. But check out women voters in the suburb, though, Jill. Joe Biden 58 to Donald Trump's 37. That is a margin of 21 points. That is an incredibly high uphill fight here for the president. And we've also got demographics along with white voters. White voters without a 4-year college degree do back Donald Trump 52% to Biden's 44. But white voters with a college degree actually give the edge to Biden 51 to 44%. Pretty interesting to look at some of the breakdown of demographics, especially here, Jill, for demographics that are really, really important to the president winning re-election. Just the trend lines, the snapshot right now of that moment does not appear as if it's all that favorable to the president right now.
We also looked at what is motivating people to pick their candidate. What can you tell us about that?
I think this is a really fascinating question, Jill, because that we basically put out there to likely voters, right? Because you got a lot of Donald Trump supporters and you got an awful lot of Joe Biden supporters. But we posed the question, are you really voting for your candidate or are you more just voting against the other guy? And here's where it gets interesting to me, because among Trump voters, 81% say, yeah, Donald Trump is our guy. That's why we are backing him. 17% of those voters are against Joe Biden. But when you go over to the Democratic camp here, though, Jill, only 58% of likely Joe Biden voters are saying, yeah, we're voting because we want Joe Biden to be president, whereas 39% of people who are expected to vote for Joe Biden are simply doing so, or at least mostly doing so, because they want to see Donald Trump removed from office. Look, you, Carlo, and myself last week on your podcast were talking about the images, the scenes that I've seen on the ground when we travel around to these so-called pivot counties. And I underscored for you that the enthusiasm for President Trump is undoubtedly there. A lot of people proudly identify as Trump supporters, and they are all too eager and willing to allow their Trump flags to proudly fly. I think that sort of speaks to a bit of that enthusiasm gap. The problem for the president is nearly 40% of Joe Biden voters are basically saying it's not really Joe Biden that we're voting for. We want to make sure that President Trump does not get another 4 years in office. So pretty revealing numbers. And I should say we are going to have new polls, new information out later on today, as well as tomorrow with some issue-based breakdowns that we're really excited to bring our viewers as well, Joe.